A car cuts you off. A mile later, it's pulled over on the shoulder, and something in you goes, good. That's how most people think karma works. The Buddha started with salt. A scoreboard. Somebody keeping count. It's a comforting idea. And it's not the one the Pali Canon describes. The oldest recorded version of this question wasn't asked about traffic. It was asked by a young man who had noticed that life deals people wildly different hands. His name was Subha, and he was young, well-born and well-educated, the kind of person who expects questions to have answers. He came with the one that people usually only ask in hospital corridors. Why, he asked, are human beings so unequal? Some short-lived, some long, some sick their whole lives, some never ill, some poor, some rich, some slow, some brilliant. It's the oldest complaint there is. Life isn't fair, and nobody can tell you why. Which is exactly why karma became such a popular answer. So, before we go anywhere near his reply, let's be clear about what the word means. Karma is not fate. It isn't a bank balance, and it isn't the universe getting even. In the earliest texts, kamma just means action, not cosmic bookkeeping. Action, and specifically intentional action, together with whatever follows from it. So, not what happens to you, what you do. That one distinction runs underneath everything else in this episode, and almost every popular use of the word gets it backwards. Which raises the obvious problem with Subha's question. If karma is what you do, why would it explain the hand you were dealt before you did anything at all? Hold that. We'll come back to it, because the canon comes back to it too, twice, and from opposite directions. Savatthi. The Buddha is staying at Jeta's Grove, in the monastery Anathapindika built. Subha, son of Todeya, comes to him and puts it plainly, the way you can only ask a stranger. And the reply he gets in Sutta MN 135 is not a comfort. It's a sentence that has been repeated for 2,500 years, and it lands like a door closing. Beings are owners of their actions, he says, heirs to their actions, born of them, related through them. Their actions are what they come home to. And it is action, he says, that divides beings into what we call inferior and superior. Not birth, not luck, not the favor of any god. Read that cold, and it sounds brutal. Sit with it for a minute, because the Buddha immediately does something most people quoting this line never mention. Then he gives Subha a list, 7 pairs, each one an action and the shape it tends to leave behind. And the pairs are blunt enough that people have been arguing about them ever since. Killing, he says, tends toward a short life. Sparing life, toward a long one. Harming living beings, toward sickness. Refusing to harm them, toward health. A temper that flares tends toward ugliness. Steadiness, toward beauty. Envy of other people's success, toward being overlooked yourself. The absence of envy, toward influence. Withholding tends toward poverty. Giving toward wealth. Arrogance toward a low birth. Humility toward a high one. Never asking wise questions toward dullness. Asking them toward understanding. And if the canon stopped there, karma would be cruelty with a Sanskrit name. A tidy machine for looking at a sick person and thinking, you must have earned this. It doesn't stop there. Because that reading breaks the moment you put it beside the rest of the canon. And it isn't a modern scholar who breaks it. It's the Buddha in 3 separate discourses. Notice what MN 135 actually says. It says these actions lead there. It does not say every life you meet can be read backwards into a verdict. Forwards is a teaching. Backwards is gossip with a halo on it. And there's a second problem with the tidy version, a bigger one. If every deed carried a fixed price tag, nothing you did afterwards could matter. No practice would help, no change of heart would matter. You'd just be paying off an invoice for the rest of your life. The Buddha says exactly this himself, and he says it not as a worry, but as the reason the rigid version of karma has to be wrong. There's a short discourse about salt. It's numbered differently in different editions. AN 3.100 in one, 3.99 in another, which tells you how old the copying is. No location survives in the discourse. No visitor, no name, no setting, just the Buddha and the monks, and a question he puts to them himself, the way a teacher does when the answer is going to sting. He begins by naming the wrong view precisely, that a person experiences a deed exactly the way they performed it. Tit for tat, mirror for mirror. If that were true, he says, the holy life could not be lived, and there would be no opportunity for the ending of suffering. That isn't a soft caveat tucked into a footnote. That's the entire path, standing or falling on one point. If the result were fixed, nothing you did afterwards could change anything. Then comes the image the discourse is named for. Imagine, he says, and he asks the monks to actually picture it, a lump of salt. Drop it into a small cup of water. He asks them directly, what happens to the water in the cup? Could you still drink it? No. Salty, spoiled, undrinkable. A small cup has no room to absorb a lump of salt. That much is obvious, and he wants it to be obvious. Now, he says, take the same lump of salt, the same size, the same weight, and drop it into the river Ganges. Nothing. The river doesn't register it. You could walk down and drink from the bank an hour later and taste nothing at all. Same salt, same amount, 2 completely different outcomes, and nothing about the salt changed between them. That's the teaching. The deed is the salt. What you have made of yourself is the volume of water it lands in. A person undeveloped in body, in virtue, in mind, in understanding, restricted, the text says, living small, a minor bad deed can wreck them. The same deed, done by someone developed in those things, someone living with an unrestricted heart, is experienced here and now and barely registers. The discourse is careful about which part moves. It never says the deed shrinks or gets canceled. It says the person is larger, so the same deed is carried differently. And to keep anyone from hearing this as mysticism, he gives 2 more comparisons, and both of them are about power, not spirituality. A poor man with nothing can be jailed over a trivial sum. A wealthy man can owe the same amount and never see the inside of a cell. And the third, a butcher can do as he likes with a poor man who steals a goat. Beat him, bind him, worse. Bring him a powerful man who took the same goat, and he can only ask, politely, for it back. The comparison isn't approving of any of that. It's describing exposure. The same weight lands differently depending on what's underneath it. So, that's the first thing karma is not. It is not a fixed exchange rate. Nothing in the texts converts a deed into a fixed amount of suffering. The second comes from a wanderer named Molyasivaka, who asked the Buddha about a belief that was popular then and is popular now. The belief that whatever a person feels, pleasure, pain, anything in between, is entirely caused by what they did before. The Buddha's answer in SN 3621 is a list. Some feelings, he says, arise from bile, some from phlegm, some from wind, some from all three together, some from a change in the weather, some from careless living, some from being attacked, and some from the result of past action. 8 causes. Old action is one of them. Anyone who says every feeling comes from past deeds, he says, goes past what they themselves know, and past what the world agrees on. That's the Buddha, in the canon, refusing the version of karma that gets used to blame sick people. It's worth knowing that line exists. And the third thing? He called the precise working out of karmic results unconjecturable. Chase that calculation, he says, and you get vexation, not answers. Which leaves the question this whole episode is walking toward. If you can widen the water, can you outrun what you already did? There's a road outside Savatthi that people have stopped using. Farmers go the long way around. Nobody travels it alone, and lately nobody travels it in groups either. A man has been killing travelers on it. The canon calls him Angulimala, finger garland, because of what he wears. And here, we should stop and be careful, because most of what you've heard about him isn't in the discourse. MN 86 doesn't say he needed 1,000 fingers. It doesn't mention a teacher who set him the task, and it doesn't have him about to kill his mother. Those come from later commentaries. The discourse just says he was a killer. What the discourse does record is stranger than the legend. The Buddha heard where the man was and walked down that road on purpose. Cowherds warned him. Shepherds warned him. Farmers and travelers warned him. People had gone that way in groups of 10 and 20 and not come back. He kept walking, and Angulimala, watching this lone ascetic stroll into his stretch of road, took up his sword and bow and went after him. This is the part that reads like folklore, and it's in the text. He runs, sprints, and cannot close the distance on a man who is walking normally. So he shouts, "Stop, ascetic, stop." And the Buddha says, "I have stopped, Angulimala. You stop." Angulimala's confusion is the hinge of the whole discourse. "You're walking," he says. "I'm the one standing still. How can you claim to have stopped?" The answer relocates the word. "I have stopped," the Buddha says, "because I have laid down violence toward all living beings. You have not stopped, because you haven't." Stopping in this discourse has nothing to do with feet. It's about whether your intention is still moving toward harm. He puts down his weapons, he asks to be ordained, and the discourse doesn't rush what comes next. He practices, he grows in restraint, and eventually he is described as fully liberated. King Pasenadi rides out to hunt him down, meets him as a monk, and can't quite believe it. What the state could not do with weapons, he says, was done without a rod or a sword. And then, with the story sitting exactly where a film would put the credits, the discourse does something no film would dare. He goes out for alms, and people throw things at him. He comes back bleeding, his bowl broken, his outer robe torn. And the Buddha does not tell him it was a misunderstanding. He tells him, bear it. You're experiencing here and now the result of actions that could have burned you for a very long time. That's the answer to the question we left standing at the river. The past isn't erased, and it isn't pretended away. It is received differently. Nothing about his awakening made him immune to consequence. He still bled. What had changed was the size of the water it fell into. There's one more moment in that discourse, and it decides what this chapter is really about. Out on alms round, Angulimala passes a woman caught in an obstructed birth, and the sight of her stops him cold. He goes back and asks what he can do. Say this to her, the Buddha tells him. Sister, since I was born, I do not recall intentionally killing a living being. And Angulimala refuses. That would be a lie, he says. I have killed many. So the Buddha moves one phrase, since I was born in the noble birth, dated from his ordination, not from his childhood. He is not given a clean history, only an honest one. He says it that way, and the text records that mother and child were well. In his own verses, he uses an image the discourse repeats. Someone once heedless who becomes heedful lights up the world like the moon coming out from behind a cloud. And there's one more line in the canon that makes all of this usable. Intention, the Buddha says, is kamma. Intending one acts, by body, by speech, by mind. Which means karma is never really happening in the past tense. It is happening in the half second before you speak. And that is the only place it has ever been available to you. So, two things you can actually use. Before you act, ask what intention is trying to get out. And after you've caused harm, you can't delete it. So widen the water. Name it. Stop repeating it. Build the qualities that change how the next lump of salt lands. Back to the car on the shoulder. The satisfying version of karma is a scoreboard somebody else is losing on. The version in the texts is a pair of hands you're using right now. More of life's biggest questions? Subscribe.